Welcome everyone to Our Android Week, a show about Android and the week's news about Android. So Alan joins us. Alan, welcome, sir. Always a pleasure.
Hey, Dan.
Eli may join us. He's doing family stuff, so he may join us. And Cadeas is a long story. And Pam has got computer issues still or something. Or is she sick now? I forget. Is she okay? We'll find out next time she comes on.
Some physical issues,
Um,
repetitive stress injuries, and so forth.
I'd take that over my issues, which are largely mental. Just kidding. Okay, so maybe not kidding. All right, so there was a story about Meerkat. I've said several stories about these streaming apps. Meerkat versus Periscope. They're Twitter-based apps, kind of, sort of. Meerkat was all the rage among the journalists that I follow, my friends in the media. And it's a live streaming app where you could quickly and easily just, click, 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 done. You're streaming something. So the first thing I noticed about Meerkat was I was pissed off that it forced you to go vertical with the camera. So like, have we conceded defeat? And I think the guy from Meerkat said, that's what everyone does, so we're just going to cave in and do that. And the kid, he always uses vertical. He says, well, that's the only way you can share it to Instagram. My niece is the same way. So I'm like, oh my God. And then there was the big fallout tiff between Periscope, which Meerkat didn't realize had been purchased by Twitter. All that happened. Now I saw a story today that said that there's a new thing where HBO's pissed off and has reached out to Twitter and or Periscope, which are now the same company, and because people are doing Game of Thrones on Periscope. They're live streaming Game of Thrones on Periscope. And so HBO is upset about this. So I guess there are Game of Thrones Periscope parties. So you can watch it in all of its 360 or 720p vertical glory or whatever the hell it is. Anyway, so the thing that stuck out to me when I was watching this, because
Struck out is the right term.
stuck out, sorry.
No, struck out.
I guess that was a Freudian slip, if there ever were one. So my thinking was, I'm watching all this stuff about this sudden revolution in technology that allows you to live stream to followers with a mobile device. And I'm like, wow, I wish someone had thought of this earlier. Oh my God,
Like
it's so
8
simple
years
and
ago.
easy. And this is what I and Sarah Hill and other journalists had been clamoring for, right? And it didn't get adoption with Hangouts or YouTube Live. I mean, it does, but it's not. I'm not seeing the enthusiasm I've seen with it. What the hell? Can you make some sense of this? It's like
No,
It's like these guys just invented live streaming.
I can't. And Mike Downs has been talking about this for a few weeks now as well. And honestly, you can't even blame Google marketing for this one, because they got the freaking president of the United States in a Hangout on air. They got tons and tons of people doing live streaming, and they're still not getting credit for it. So you can't even blame Google's
I think it's
crappy
about the
marketing.
UI. I think it's about the UI. I think it's about one's kludgy, one isn't. One is like idiot proof. Any moron, middle schooler could do it. Meerkat or Periscope. It's like you're in Twitter anyway, and you download the app, and it says, I want to stream. You can optionally say what you're doing and hit go stream, and you're done. You're streaming. And they notify all your followers, and everything just works. With Hangouts and with YouTube Live, one is very full featured, but there are still shows. Most of the Hangouts I see are about how to do a Hangout, for Christ's sakes. Nobody's
just
doing a
because you follow
Periscope
along.
thing about how to turn the ON/OFF switch on your Periscope to the ON position. I think it's a UI and a ease of use thing. I'm not saying that Periscope is full featured like Hangouts or YouTube Live. I'm just saying that one seems to have had incredible adoption instantaneously, and I'm seeing it all over my feed.
Yeah, no, but Dan, remember a couple of weeks ago when I asked your youthful protege there if he had heard of Meerkat, he said no, nobody's heard of Meerkat.
Correct.
So it's not that everyone is all over Meerkat.
Yeah, I think probably his only reference now is he might have possibly heard about it if he can recall the conversation where we asked him previously if he had heard about it. So
Right.
clearly, it's not the dominant thing. And my circle of people I follow on Twitter is limited to journalists, largely, and tech, sites and news sites, right? So I'm not Joe Normal. I'm not Joe
right.
Sixpack.
So here's the thing. It's a flash in the pan. BBC, World Have Your Say, did Periscope for a couple of days. It sounds like they've stopped doing it now.
Who? Oh, BBC.
What?
The BBC was doing it.
Yeah, everyone was doing it.
Yeah, I saw like Brian Stelter, who does a lot of us were trying it out.
Right,
Like,
but here's the thing: everyone was doing Hangouts back in the day too, and they stopped.
Maybe my criticism is unfounded.
No, your criticism's entirely founded.
I remember the CBS. What's his name? Who I adore. CBS. Not Sunday Morning. Face the Nation with. Oh my God! He just announced his retirement, and I love him. Help me here. He just he did it.
What you're talking about, and I don't care either.
He was like leading for a while. He was like the last of the Walter Cronkite generation, and but they did it a couple times, and they were like, the video sucks. There's a sync issue. The audio sucks. It's not television, and Periscope sucks, and Meerkat sucks. But
here's the bottom line. Here's what it boils down to. We've got I/O in a month. If Google hasn't announced something by then, I think, and I think it's going to come from YouTube. This is a prime opportunity for YouTube. They'll announce something by then, or I don't know, somebody there is drunk.
You talking about some kind of like super easy app thing that lets you do it and blows it up everywhere?
I'm talking about they're going to release an app. I'm predicting an app that'll be available for Android and maybe iOS called YouTube Live Now.
Something like G Now, YouTube Live Now.
No, it'll be YouTube branded. It'll be YouTube
Really?
Live Now.
They need
or
to have
something
something
like
that you just can hit a button and you're live, and it notifies all your contacts or whatever your followers or what would the notification be? Because that's a lot of it. You know
I
what I
don't
mean?
know. What does YouTube have now for live notifications? They got something.
I don't know.
I don't know, Dan. You're the one who's broadcasting live on YouTube right now.
I have no idea. I mean, there are people, if they follow you, it's kludgy. It's kludgy to set it up. You know how ridiculously complicated this show is to set up?
Right, no, Dan. I'm saying you press the freaking button, it goes out to your notification list, or it goes out to your subscription list. It's there. People, do this now.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But then you have to decide. Like, you don't want to overload people. I don't know. I don't know.
Who gives a flying fuck?
But I know that Periscope and Meerkat are doing it right because I get stuff that's relevant to me and I don't get anything that's not relevant to me, and it just works. I'm not sure how they do it.
Do you subscribe to any YouTube channels, Dan?
Yeah.
Do any of them do live broadcasts?
Yeah.
Do you get notifications when they do live broadcasts?
The only one I subscribe to for that on that level of detail is the McLaughlin Group and the White House. The McLaughlin Group, I subscribe to a ton of them, but the only ones I subscribe to actually get notifications from are the McLaughlin Group, and I get one notification a week when they post their show, and then I get from the White House, and I often get stuff like they're live or they've uploaded a video.
So the answer is yes.
But it's
Thank you. Next subject.
Okay, it's still kludgy.
Oh, God.
All right, next subject is oh my God, I'm not even ready. It's the Mobilegeddon, right? So this is a thing. So here's the question. We've learned starting at midnight tonight, Google is going to change their algorithm, and I think it's a good idea. And I've been seeing snippets of this, but if you have a site that Google deems is mobile friendly, then if someone is searching for pizzeria near whatever town or whatever you're searching for, then the algorithm will change. If you are searching on a mobile device, if it is a mobile-friendly website, then your site might get a better preference than a non-mobile friendly site, whereas on desktop and in the past that might not have been the case. So all the stuff you have built up over time, all the SEO brilliance that you've demonstrated over the years, might be completely useless to you for a mobile user starting at midnight tonight. And if you want to check this, do a search for your site on Google and you will see an indicator mobile friendly if it is considered mobile friendly. You may have to do the search on a mobile device, but they actually put a little indicator now to let you know. There's also a test you can do to see if, you can put your URL in. You can just Google, what's the mobile friendly Google test, and you'll find it's an actual Google site. So I think this is a good thing. I think a lot of people are in for a major shock if they look at their stats tomorrow, Alan, and I think this is like some tough love for some of these sites that are holding out, and ignoring the fact that probably over half of their visitors are on mobile devices, and they're ignoring that. Alan, any thoughts on this?
I think it's going to depend. I mean, is Google going to not direct you to a site that has good quality information just because it's not mobile? So they're not giving the details of the algorithm. They're not giving how much, mobile-friendly sites are getting juiced up by this. So there's some question. I think, it's going to depend on what the implementation really ends up as. In general, I agree with this. I think this is generally a good thing. But I worry that some sites that have high-quality data will get shafted because they're not specifically designed to be mobile friendly.
I'll give a real world example here. I've got a site, I get notifications all day. I had some post and it's up to 4 or 5,000 comments, and every single day I get and it's all spam comments, and I was getting these emails. So then I went back to the site. It's a dormant site for years, but I'm holding on to the domain. I go there and I'm like, oh my God. And then I get you should upgrade the WordPress. So it's like, I click on, okay, upgrade the WordPress thing. And then it says, before you upgrade, you should do your database backup. And then I click on that, and then it sends me to a help file on how to do it. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have time for this shit. And so I just ignored it. I closed everything out, and I'm at risk. And my site's probably not mobile friendly. And, I think a lot of people in that position, they might have some site which has some good content on it, but they're not a IT type guy, and so they're going to be punished for this. But in the end, it's going to drag everyone kicking and screaming to the realization that a lot of people, especially young people, are single device folks, and they're on the internet with their phone or their phablet or whatever, and they're not on the traditional desktop, and they're willing to compromise and have the shitty versions. And this is a whole thing. This is a big thing. This is like everyone was in a mansion, and now we're all in condos, and there's a condo maintenance fee to be paid. So here we go. All right, next is this 3 gripes from the European Union. We've talked about this, but Kevin, oh my God, this, speaking of a shitty site, all these pop-ups, and I swear to God, if there's some way someone can figure out how to opt out of this 4C or whatever it is, these surveys, will you take a survey about our site and give us all your demographic information so we can, better deliver ads to you, and then the site crashes at the very end. I did it one time to try to be helpful years ago, and it crashed at the very end. I couldn't go back, and I just wasted 20 minutes, and there's no way to block it. Even the pop-up blocker I've installed doesn't block it. So anyway, there's 3 basic gripes here, and Al and I have differed on this, but let's look at this reasonably. This is the European Union, which is upset about Android. Whether Google has illegally hindered the development and market access of rival mobile applications or services by requiring or incentivizing smartphone and tablet manufacturers to exclusively pre-install Google's own applications or services. Number 2, whether Google has prevented smartphone and tablet manufacturers who wish to install Google's applications and services on some of their Android devices from developing and marketing modified and potentially competing versions of Android, so-called Android forks, on other devices, thereby illegally hindering the development and market access of rival mobile operating systems and mobile applications or services. That sounds exactly like a big gripe against Microsoft back in the day when they would, if you wanted to get their cheap OEM licensing, they would require you to pay a license fee on all computers you produced, regardless of whether they were all Windows. So if you wanted
exactly like that. It's exactly like that, and Microsoft lost
right
in Europe.
And then number 3, whether Google has illegally hindered the development and market access of rival applications and services by tying or bundling certain Google applications and services distributed on Android devices with other Google applications, services, and or application programming interfaces of Google. The most kludgy of the kludgy list of 3. Thoughts on this, Alan? On the search thing, I think if it were in the U.S., I'd say they have no case. In the EU, I'd say they have a case. On this one, they seem to have a case.
You think so? I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I think
even
Google's
number 2
actually
about if you want to play ball with us, you have to play ball with us on all your devices. You can't do a second device that doesn't play ball with us.
I think it's going to depend on the licensing agreements, which we haven't seen, of course. But I think it also depends on exactly what is meant by some of this. So, so they prevent. So accusation number 1. Let's take them down one by one.
Okay.
So 1 is basically saying that you have to exclusively pre-install Google's own applications or services. And I think there's already evidence that that's not true.
When we say exclusively pre-install, let's clarify this. Let's say that you have to have Google Maps and you have to have Gmail and you have to have the Google app. Does that mean that they are not allowed to also pre-install, even if not highlighted as the default, they are not allowed to pre-install a Bing app? They're not allowed to install a Bing Maps app or a Yahoo app?
That's what that accuses them of. Yet my understanding is that there are manufacturers that install Microsoft dock readers from Microsoft.
Which you've acknowledged are vastly superior to any of the
which
Google
is a
options out there.
direct competitor to a Google required application. So, you can make the accusation, but my understanding, and mind you, I'm not a lawyer, I am not a tablet I'm not a phone manufacturer, but my understanding is there are phone manufacturers and carriers that install other stuff on there and have for years. So that's point 1. The second point is whether they're preventing people from developing and marketing modified and potentially competing versions of Android, i.e. forks. I think all you need to do is point to Samsung and TouchWiz, and you'll see that that's wrong. You need to point to Amazon, and you'll see that that's wrong. So I think that's an incredibly flimsy one. And the third one, saying that they are tying or bundling certain Google applications and services distributed on Android devices with other Google applications and services. Yes and no. I mean, that's like saying you need an Apple account in order to install Apple apps from the App Store. Okay, so what? You can perfectly well use an Android phone without having to activate Android, without having to activate the Google Play Store.
Okay.
I think the EU's arguments here seem far weaker than search, if you ask me.
However,
not to mention
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not to mention the fact that Google only has like a 50 or 60% market share.
Who else has a market share in Europe?
You mean besides Apple? Microsoft actually has a pretty good market share in Europe.
Wow.
It's where Nokia used to be.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting to see this because, and we have to put this in context because I mean I've lived in Europe for years and as a child, but we have to put things in perspective. Like when we talk about the First Amendment, we have that in the United States. You can say anything you want, but things that would be anathema here are commonplace in Europe, like a celebrity being able to prevent a tabloid from publishing something about the fact that they're having an affair with some person other than their wife, and they can go to court and get that story blocked in Europe. But
Yeah.
of course, here that would be crazy. So we have to put things in context that Europe has a vastly different view of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, for better or worse. So all that. All right, so there's that story. All right, so Google's mobile search results on Android now prompt users to install apps with relevant content. Is this anything noteworthy here, Alan? It seems like a good deal for app developers, clearly.
This is pretty nifty. I mean, if you're an app developer and you're making use of Google indexing your content, which you can do, you've been able to do for a while now, or some app developers have been able to do for a while now. Now, Google will, instead of just returning the search results, will return basically a link saying, hey, there are search results attached to this app. You can install this app. So it kind of extends the concept of indexing web pages to indexing application contents and then surfacing them in appropriate ways. It's really kind of neat, and it just kind of works.
And it sounds like it's less intrusive than when you go, if you're on Huffington Post or Drudge Report or MSNBC or Fox News, whatever, and you end up at some site for the first time, like dailymail.com or whatever, and you're looking at an article and you get some intrusive pop-up suggesting that you download their app for Android or iOS or whatever. And it's like something you have to wait for it to fully load because you're on mobile, and then you have to click the X if you can find the X, and you might miss it and then go to something to download the app because it's so small, the screen. It's a huge pain in the ass.
Well, you see, here's where Android has a major advantage over Apple. The Google Play Store app on Google, on Android, is just way superior than whatever the hell Apple's doing these days. It's like it was actually designed to work that way as opposed to designed to use another device to install it.
And you don't have to sign in every 10 seconds. Okay. All right. So another thing that's cool is Google, and we talked about this on Friday. Google's released a new handwriting app for Android, and I think it was Oleg or who was it that highly praised this. It said the recognition was amazing, and it's, I think, at last count that I saw, 82 different languages where you're able to write in fairly sloppy, typical cursive, and it gets it.
Yeah, I was able to play with it a bit over the weekend. It works quite well. I've got one or two gripes with it, but otherwise it's a really, really pretty cool system.
What's the application here? Is this something you played with it, right? But is this something that you'd find useful? I could see maybe on a tablet if you were taking notes, if you're a journalist, perhaps. But then it all depends on the accuracy. Is this a gimmick, or is this something? What's the? Oh my God, we have to have this application.
I think there are a number of practical applications for it. One person I saw was talking about how they wished that it had stenography detection, because then they could, write stenograph notes directly. Kind of, if you think about it, one of the problems of taking notes on a tablet or a mobile device is you have to look at it in order to make sure that you're typing things in correctly, or even that your fingers are ending up in the correct basic location. You don't have this problem with laptops because people very quickly learn how to touch type. So if you're taking notes with handwriting, something that can recognize your handwriting, you can look at what you're trying to observe while gesturing on the device without having to look at the device. And that's a big win in a lot of scenarios.
Okay, so what is the... as a journalist, let's say I'm covering a government meeting or any sort of thing where I'm doing an audio recording. The ideal solution would be if I could get an auto transcript in the same way that like Google Voice works with the voicemail, where they send you a fairly shitty quality, but it's better than it used to be, transcript of that voice recording. Is there a go-to app that's you could take your phone and record a meeting and save a lot of transcription time and have some algorithm accurately or fairly accurately record what was being said? Is there something that I'm missing?
Probably. I don't know what it is. I also don't know the relevance here.
I mean, it's about transcribing something into editable text from a non-editable text format. And you mentioned someone in a courtroom doing whatever, and it seems like rather than someone listening to the conversation and transcribing it or transferring it to cursive and then having the computer do that. So now we got generation 3. If they could actually just listen to the recording and do it correctly from that would be superior to a version of someone's version of what actually happened. Okay, so next is I think we've talked about this before, Alan. I know we've talked about this multiple times, but Cyanogen, we've heard about this spat. I saw a story like Cyanogen, the CEO or head of it, wants to kill Google off or whatever, or take Android away from Google. I think, wasn't Cyanogen originally like partially funded by Google, and then they had some falling out or what have you, and then and correct me if I'm wrong on that, but now we see Microsoft, which is guns a-blazing against Google. Now they're gonna install a suite of apps with Cyanogen, and you have a Cyanogen phone. And so what it seems to me like, for lack of a better ghetto term, shit just got real with Cyanogen versus stock Android and the offshoots. What's the deal here?
Okay, here's really the kicker, is that you should have put this story right after the EU story, because I can almost bet that although the guys inside Google are a little anxious about this, they're also cheering it on.
Oh, for their case, it's brilliant. Yeah, it could not be better timing.
Exactly.
What do you mean we're a monopoly? One of the biggest companies in technology is declaring war against us with an offshoot of something that we've given away and allow them to create a monster that is challenging us. How dare you consider us a monopoly?
Right.
That's perfect for a case.
So here's the thing. Cyanogen currently licenses Google Play. That's how, I have Google Play on my Cyanogen, on my OnePlus One. I've got no problem, using Google features, same as most other people. It's a fairly stock Android in that way, but it's also got a lot of other Cyanogen additions to it. I think this is an interesting approach. If I was Google, would I be anxious? Yeah, I'd be anxious. Microsoft has a lot of money and a lot of power they're willing to throw at this. But I don't think they're going to completely unseat Google from Android. Amazon tried it, and they failed.
Yeah,
and I think Amazon's more powerful than Microsoft is right now.
But Amazon is a bookseller turned retail seller, really an IT company.
No,
in that game.
Amazon, as you just said, it's an IT company.
But initially, this wasn't their main focus. Microsoft has been developing apps since day one, operating systems and apps, and their cash cow for decades has been trying to come up with the best apps they could. I remember him famously complaining that Microsoft Money was shitty compared to Intuit's offering, and Quicken. And it's just, I think it's getting real now, and so it's going to be really interesting to see here. So it certainly is going to cause Android to up their game, I guess. But I can't think of a better partner for Cyanogen, and I'd never considered them before. I always thought it was some like thing for hackers to play with.
It was.
It looks like now it's going mainstream, and with Microsoft, talk about a partner. I can't imagine a better scenario for them. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops.
I mean, it went mainstream a year ago, and now we'll see how it plays out. I think it's but just because they partnered now still means they need to get on a phone somewhere. Right now, they're on one phone, and they're having a spat with that company.
Yeah, when you say they went mainstream a year ago, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know anybody. You're the only person I know who has a Cyanogen phone, unless it's like one of my hacker friends who has a rooted Android phone has installed a build from Cyanogen. But we'll see where this goes. But they certainly, if I were an investor or fan of Cyanogen, and I'm not against them, I'm not a fanboy by any stretch, but it'll be interesting to see how this goes. So the next thing here we have is your favorite web, sir.
The final follow up to that, though, is that Cyanogen still has yet to deliver on Lollipop. They're only now beginning to roll out Android 5.0. In fact, you know what? Let me check and see if mine has shown up yet, because it hasn't. I know a couple of people have gotten it, but not many. So deployment has been slow. They're not exactly on the ball.
Clearly, Google, until someone develops their own and controls their own operating system, that's been the biggest. That's been the biggest drawback of what the Kindle version of Android has done, and what Cyanogen's done is they're always a step or two behind, and Google's actually innovating, coming up with the stuff, and spending all the money to develop Android, and all the others are grabbing a fork or grabbing a version and forking it off, and there's always a delay there. Go ahead.
No, Dan, that's a little bit unfair to Cyanogen. Cyanogen has been doing some really pretty cool development using Android as the base.
I agree, and I think that some of their developments and innovations have found their way into Android Central.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that that's not the case, but what I'm saying is, as you said, there's certain when there's a new whiz bang cool thing, like you were like, oh man, how much longer until I get Lollipop or whatever. That's all. If Google does produce some new cool thing, that's always going to be filtered down to Cyanogen or the Kindle version at some point in the future. But the reverse is true. If Jeff Bezos's version or if Cyanogen's version comes up with some new cool thing, it's going to be a while before Google adopts it, if they're allowed to, based on patents. So it's kind of it's interesting to see. I don't know where this is going to go. This is like the Wild West, truly. So this other story: your favorite websites can now send notifications to Chrome on Android. Support for push notifications. God, I hate those. I hate when they're opt out. When they're opt in, I get an opportunity to say no. There's very few I want. Today, several websites, including eBay, Facebook, Pinterest, Vice News, and Product Hunt, never heard of that, will begin to offer Chrome push notifications on both desktop and Android. It's that last platform that's a big deal. Websites that support Chrome push notifications can send out updates that look and feel just like regular app updates, even if the Chrome browser isn't currently active on the Android device. Is this a good thing or a bad thing from your perspective? And then please quantify or clarify that between your perspective as a user and as a developer.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Dan. Do you use Gmail?
I do.
Do you like the fact that if you're using Gmail on your phone, you get a notification when new email comes in?
Sometimes, yes. If it's Alan saying, Dan, I need my $12,000 paycheck for last week's show, then I don't like that notification. If it's Dan,
so the answer is yes, Dan.
You've won the lottery, I do like it. So yeah, I like notifications.
Okay, so why wouldn't sites like Gmail that are primarily web-based be able to do the same sort of thing?
You say primarily web-based. I bet half or better of their users now are mobile. Is that a fair characterization of them?
That's the point, is that now that they're mobile, why shouldn't we have these same features available to a mobile device?
I'm thinking that when I'm typically the use case scenario is when you're on desktop, I have unlimited bandwidth within reason. If I'm doing Tor, running a server, whatever, but your typical person has no cap on their desktop home experience, but they might have a cap on their.
But Dan.
But Dan,
I installed it. If there was such a thing as an eBay app, and there might be, I have no idea because I don't do
I'm
eBay
sure
these
there
days.
is.
Okay, but if there was an eBay app, it would send you notifications and it would still use the same amount of data. All this is saying is that the exact same features that would have been available through an app are now available without an app.
Okay.
You still have to turn on the web app. You still have to subscribe to the notifications. You can still turn them off. It's exactly the same thing, just using a completely different method.
Okay. So we're for push notifications, according to Alan. Bring the notifications. All right, this is a thing that you mentioned, and it was a big deal today. This was Android Wear. What you want, get what you need. There's a big update. Everyone's talking about it with Android Wear. And can you fill us in, Dr. Furstenberg?
Sure. So the big news about Android Wear today is whole bunch of new updates coming in. So some of these are addressing a lot of concerns that people had over time. So it's things like now apps in some cases can be always on. Previously, apps would be forced to be shut down after not doing anything for a few seconds. Now the app can request to be always on if it makes sense to do so. And it can go into a dim screen mode, so it still saves battery, yet can be presenting the data right at your wrist when you need it. There's now a neat feature so that, what's the way to do it? So basically you can now draw emoji characters. So this is kind of gimmicky, but it's also, a direct swipe against certain other wrist wearable devices.
Kind of gimmicky.
That claim to be doing something similar to that. There's now an improved way to actually manipulate, to flip between notifications. Because previously, you would have to, swipe forward and backwards. Now you can just twist your wrist to go from notification to notification. And that's, might look a little strange, but if you've got one hand full of something, now you can, literally just twist your wrist and see the updates as they come in. Apps and contacts are now closer. Previously, you had to do a couple of extra swipes to get to them. Now they're right there. And I think the really neat one is that it now has Wi-Fi support. So if the watch had a Wi-Fi chip built into it, and some of the bigger ones like the Moto 360 did, then as long as your phone is also attached, it also has a network connection, it'll still work. So it'll still communicate with your phone over Wi-Fi if you're out of Bluetooth range. That is pretty cool.
So I saw a bunch of posts on this today, and to me the bottom line is this: when Android Wear first came out, there was a lot of for folks who actually had it. They said it shows a lot of promise. It's impressive. It's not quite there yet. It's not ready for general release, but it's not quite there yet. Does this release push it into the next threshold where people are going to buy it and it's sort of like, wow, this is awesome and useful, and we're not going to see those sorts of comments? Not that it wasn't useful before, but it's sort of this on the, oh gosh, it's almost there and it's delivering on its promise, but it could get better. Have we crossed that threshold? Because it's a new device. I think we
crossed that threshold back when we had customized watch faces.
Okay.
Because there was a true, that actually, I'm a little confused about what the difference is now between a customized watch face and an application.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's still a lot being worked out between the two now. The lines have blurred a lot, but I think we're definitely. I think the biggest thing that Wear really needs at this point are the applications to go with it, and there are plenty there already. It just needs there hasn't yet been the killer app for Wear yet. There are lots of good applications, a lot of useful applications, but no killer application yet. Although just about everything about Wear, trashes just about every other wrist wearable product on the market today.
And while we're on this, before we get to a similar topic, I just saw a thing pass through. It was just posted this morning, and I just saw it on my Twitter stream just now. You would have seen it while Alan was talking on the screen here, and it might have caught your eye. Could doctors donning Google Glass reduce emergency room wait times? And I'll show you the lead paragraph here. Imagine walking into an emergency room with an awful rash and waiting hours to see a doctor until finally a physician who doesn't have specific knowledge of your condition gives you an ointment and a referral to a dermatologist. That could change if the technological device like Google Glass, which is a wearable computer that is smaller than an ink pen and includes a camera function, could be strapped to an emergency room doctor's head or to his or her eyeglasses and used to beam a specialist in to see a patient at the bedside. Not only would a patient get a more specific initial diagnosis and treatment, but a second visit to a dermatologist might not be necessary. So that's an article you want to check out. Again, look, this is on pbs.org. Could doctors donning Google Glass reduce ER wait times? Question mark. This is from today, April 20th, 2015 at 10:51 a.m. Eastern. And I would just remind you that Alan Furstenberg is the co-author of Designing and Developing for Google Glass, authored with Jason Salas in Guam, and it's a great book available at O'Reilly Media. So check it out. It's the best and was initially the first book on how to develop for Google Glass and what that means and the new design paradigm that one should confront when dealing with this. And really it applies to all wearables to some degree. So two related topics on the Wear thing, and then we'll get to the cardboard, is that we saw the OnePlus One, the invites are over, or I guess that's related to our cyanogen thing, but we see 6% of U.S. adults plan to buy Apple Watch. I think we teased this on Friday. We may have talked about this last week. Can't remember, honest to God, because it's pretty cool, but still not quite there. Flipboard thing. Any thoughts on the OnePlus One being open for dibs, and then the 6% of folks say they're going to buy an Apple Watch?
The OnePlus One being now open for sales is that in the same post where they talked about that, they essentially said, hey, by the way, we've got the OnePlus 2 coming out soon.
Oh, so it's a dump.
I wouldn't quite put it that way, but, they've got no need to limit sales at this point.
By the way, I just want to announce that MySpace Week episodes are now free on our website. All right. But you still you have one, right? And you like it?
Yeah, I love it.
What do you compare it to? What's your? I see a lot of buzz about the Galaxy 6.
I hear a lot of things about the S6. I don't care.
You're happy with your OnePlus One?
I'm happy with my OnePlus One.
And if history repeats itself,
everything I hear about the S6 boils down to, ooh, it looks really good, really nice. It's really slick. Operating system's the same shit as it always was. I'm not going to pay extra for that.
You're the last guy standing. I dare to want to challenge Alan Furstenberg.
You know what? I like it when things look good. I'm not going to pay twice as much just to have it look good.
True. Functionality is key. Speaking of looking good, 6% of U.S. adults plan to buy Apple Watch. Is that surprising in any way? I think we touched on this Friday.
Depends on how you want to spin it. I can spin it as something like, only 1/10 of all iOS users are planning to buy an Apple Watch. But, whatever.
So we could not be more excited about that stat. Yeah, it's
Hey, hey, a million a million device sales is nothing to sneeze at.
I still at that price point, especially the higher end ones, and some of the people who are going crazy. It's this is not a Rolex that will last, a millennia, or your great grandkid's going to wear it proudly and say this was my great grandpa's watch. This is a disposable device. I don't care how
Yep.
many jewel encrusted cases you put on it. You know what I mean? I don't get that. Um, and I think there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. But I don't know. I
I,
mean, we've been
I think
proven
we
wrong by
are,
Apple many times before.
you know, I've said before, I'll say it again. I think the UI is bad. I think the UX is bad, but it doesn't surprise me that it sold this well.
Yeah, I think it's going
And
to.
I'm looking forward to trying it out.
Yeah, they could have the bubonic plague in a box with an Apple logo, and there'd be a line around the building. So
Yep.
you were at I/O last year, and you got a little cardboard thing, and I think it was just at the very end. It literally it's almost like Steve Jobs said. And just one more thing, um, it was oh, and by the way, there's a little cardboard thing in
I was going to say
your
it
goodie
was
bag.
even after the one more thing. It was we were literally walking out the doors.
Yeah, he
We
was
had all
talking to the
stood
back
up
of
and
heads.
were walking, heading for the exit, and he said, "And you're all getting cardboard."
Now,
We're
in
like, "What?"
retrospect, when I saw that, the impression was a throwaway joke or whatever. But was that a carefully calculated move that he would deliberately downplay the delivery of that?
I don't
And
think so. I think he either forgot about it until the slide came up, or it really was just kind of an afterthought.
so apparently it's not so much an afterthought. So why don't you explain for folks who don't know what Google Cardboard is? Because I know you were one of the the first few hundred people to in the wild to play with it, and you've had it for quite some time. And there's been some news of late. And should we be excited about this in an Oculus Rift
You know
era?
what? At I/O 2014, I said the big hit of the show was cardboard. Cardboard, basically, I mean, there are a couple of ways to describe it. One of the ways I like to describe it is about a year ago, Samsung and Oculus announced that they were teaming up to create this great new device where you would slide your Samsung device into this big headset, bulky thing that literally strapped onto your head. And this was going to be the future of VR. And it was going to cost a few $1,000s. So Google at I/O essentially released the plans for how to make a device that you could insert your Nexus phone into and hold it up to your face, make it out of cardboard and a couple of other pieces for about 25 bucks. So this multi-$1,000 device from Samsung was being replaced with a $25 device from Google. That's kind of killer when you think about it. The other way to think of it, of course, is like a ViewMaster viewer that you stick your mobile device in, and that's just kind of cool. So cool, in fact, that it sounds like ViewMaster has partnered with Google to create a device based on cardboard. So yeah, since Google gave the plans away, basically, lots of people are making and selling cardboard for all sorts of different form factors.
What's the reason they would have given that away?
Because really what was important to Google was the software kit behind it, which they also gave away. But it kind of put them, it literally launched them right into the VR battle.
But when
So
you say
here they
give,
were.
okay, clarify this. When you say give away, are they giving away the right to implement it into your own device, or are they giving away the right for you to take their code and their plans for the device and completely fork it, a la Jeff
Well,
Bezos or Cyanogen, and compete with them in effect?
there's two things. I mean, yeah, you're going to be able to compete with them, but it's also really they're going to be able to compete against Oculus Rift, which is owned by Facebook,
Right.
and Samsung. So, so there's two components to this. One is the plans to build your own cardboard, and they gave that away. it basically was Google saying, look, we're not going to be a hardware manufacturer on this. It's $25. If you want to make it out of an old pizza carton, go make it out of an old pizza carton. What was more important to them is that the the library that supports 3D viewing, that supports VR, that's now built in with a Unity engine, all of that is now controlled by Google, so it gives a little more prominence to that API.
Okay, I'm dropping my microphone.
Don't do that, Dan.
Oh my God, I'm just... all hell is breaking loose here. We're getting crazy here. Okay, so Cardboard's going nowhere. Just kidding. No, I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see it. I haven't played with it, and I think it's pretty amazing. I remember, like you, I thought it was just some throwaway thing, and then you told us about it, and you were like, oh my God, this is really amazing. And so I'm excited because, like, just like Android, it puts smart technology into the hands of the masses. So I got three things I wanted to ask you about, and I'm writing notes down here so I don't forget. We're going to talk. We have two shows. We have this program, which is every Monday night at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, unless it's earlier, which it was tonight, and that's rare for us. But I wanted to ask you about, I just got the HBO Now, I guess it is, and I want to ask you about the Comcast merger, and I want to first ask you about Project Loon, just for an update on what we might talk about Friday. Apparently, they're getting ready to launch a whole lot of balloons. They've got a crane system that can launch, like, I think dozens an hour or dozens a day or whatever, and this is going to become a thing. So for folks who are sort of on the hemisphere observing this issue, are we going to get this, or is this just for emerging markets, or what's the deal here? Because this is really exciting to see so many people at long last. Are we going to have competition for broadband, or is this a niche thing for a niche audience?
It's funny you said hemisphere, Dan.
That was a
because
deliberate...
because my understanding is that this is only being deployed in the southern hemisphere initially.
So Brad will be ecstatic and the rest of us are screwed.
Right, but keep in mind that part of the reason why the rest of us are screwed is because it's using LTE bands, and currently those are, limited in North America and in Europe. Those are in use by incumbent carriers already.
And I can tell you, as a former radio guy, I just speaking of bands, I just saw I think Norway or one of the countries is going to get rid of FM. And I mean, they're shutting down all the FM stations.
Yeah, so, that's a shame. But
that's shocking to me.
Here's an interesting one. At the same time, did you know that most mobile devices that we have today have FM receivers in them?
I did not know that.
Yep. Apparently, the National Association of Broadcasters has an app that you can install that if your device and your carrier support it, your phone can pick up FM transmissions.
Really?
Really.
That would be a very interesting test to see what the quality is between listening to your favorite radio station on your phone via the data.
I'll send you the link. We'll give it a try.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that and I recommend WLNI and WIQO in Lynchburg. I have friends at one who switched to the other one. Then I was doing a segment on one, and then anyway that didn't happen. So blah blah blah. All right. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is the Comcast Time Warner merger. Maybe I want to say that might have been. And we hinted about this on Friday, but we're seeing now stories about I'm seeing a lot of mainstream stories like in the Washington Post that are saying basically what we said on Friday, that because it just broke then that it appears that the Justice Department or whoever the FTC or whatever it is that are going to fight this and say it's not in the consumer's interest and it's anti-consumer, and it's looking bad for the merger. It
sounds like it's the Justice Department. And 18 months after announcing they wanted to merge, Time Warner and Comcast are going to talk to the Justice Department. Little late, guys? Come on.
I just think that, as we said on Friday, if the government is going to come against your merger on antitrust grounds or what have you, that the way these usually don't end well for the companies. Their choice is drop it and move on, or go into an extended fight that will cost a ton of money and go for years. At which point, both companies are paralyzed for future decisions because it's all based on like, well, what if it depends on how this thing happens or doesn't happen, and we can't plan for the next 5 years. And so you just have to like cut and run. And I think that's probably what's going to happen if these stories are accurate. And we're starting to see that same logic from major sites like the New York Times and the Washington Post. And then anyway, I got the HBO app, and I was thinking today, kudos to Game of Thrones, because I basically got it just to watch Game of Thrones. And the last time I did that, I actually made a big expense for, not that $15 a month is a big expense, but it's sort of a commitment. So over time, I guess it would be. The last time was, I remember I bought the PlayStation 2 specifically, and this was around, I guess, 1999, 2000, something like that, specifically to play Final Fantasy X. And that's the only game I ever played on it. And I almost finished it, and I never finished it. I never found out what happened to Luna or whatever. But then it got in storage, and I had to move or whatever, and so one day I'll finish it. But I literally bought the PlayStation 2 specifically for one game. That's the only game I ever played on it. I played it for like, a month or two, whatever. But what does this mean for the traditional linear broadcasting model and the cable TV bundling model? We've talked about this numerous times, Alan, but any thoughts? Are we kind of at the point where we've seen so many of these things happen, the CBS app, and I think we're at the beginning of an avalanche that's going to happen, and I think it does not bode well for the traditional TV bundling model, and it especially does not bode well for some of these lower tier cable TV channels, sad to say, like C-SPAN, which have benefited from mandatory subscription fees. And so I worry about that sort of thing.
Example.
C-SPAN
is a lousy example.
I mean, it's important when I think...
No, C-SPAN is a lousy example because its model is completely different than everyone else's.
Explain. Because I don't know, honestly.
My understanding of C-SPAN is that it's basically required to be funded by the cable companies. They're required to carry it.
By the government?
It's part of their It was part of their agreement for public access.
But the bottom line is, if I'm a Netflix subscriber, I'm not required to see C-SPAN on Netflix. If I'm an HBO Now subscriber, which I now am, I'm not required to have access to C-SPAN. So that's my concern.
C-SPAN is just a lousy example.
What about the Hispanic channels, right? That's a minority group that actually I think Univision has beaten all the other newscasts multiple times, but they are a minority group. So what if you're in an area that only has like 5, whatever, and you don't have that option? It's all of a sudden, I don't know. I just see. I'm not saying I want big government regulation. I'm not for that.
No,
but
it's really. The answer
there were
is
pros
really
and cons.
The answer is obvious. You got streaming Univision.
What about the fact that they won't be able to have a show like Seinfeld when it was, or 60 Minutes, because the money's not there? Because we all know that on YouTube or whatever, there's no money to be made.
We're not talking YouTube. We're talking, but that's the point. You can still monetize your show in other ways.
I guess instead of, we're just switching players, but it seems like a lot of the major players are just switching to the new platform. Like HBO was a major player on the old legacy platform, and now they're going to be a major player on the new platform because I just signed up basically to watch Game of Thrones, which I've never seen before. And so I'm going to be all
That's it.
excited, I'm sure.
That's it.
Okay. Any anything else we've missed that's really amazing that we should talk about?
Oh,
Okay. We have two programs. Google Plus Week is every Friday at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific on Google Plus Week and YouTube live. We talk about news of a tech nature with a specific focus toward Google and Google products like YouTube and Google Plus. We also have this program every Monday at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, unless it's not at those times, like tonight. And please watch, please comment. We always look at the comments during the show or afterward, and we appreciate all of you very much. And we appreciate Alan for showing up tonight. And Eli had a family thing. Pam is ill, and I'm not really sure what continent Cadeas is on, but he'll be
yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah. We already covered all of this. Wrap it, Dan.
Anyway, thank you all very much. I appreciate Alan's full support. And buy his book, Designing and Developing for Google Glass. But while it's, still on the #1 New York Times bestseller for Google Glass books. Thank you all very much. Until next time, have an epic, awesome Android week.